everyone. This is Bill Griffin. Welcome to Different Take Podcast. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Really appreciate you watching. Today I want to talk about something called restorative justice in schools, particularly public schools. And in the place where I live, if you don't live in Gwinnett County, Georgia, still apply to you. But in Gwinnett County, Georgia, they've implemented restorative justice. So what is that? And I wasn't sure, I wasn't familiar with the term, but restorative justice is, in a nutshell, instead of using discipline such as detention, suspensions, expulsion, and arresting people that misbehave, students that misbehave, other procedures, but a lot of counseling is involved. So that's what they do. It's after the fact counseling. There may be before also, but a lot of counseling instead of punishment, traditional sorts of punishment that you would find in schools. In my opinion, this practice is, and I try to avoid expletives on the channel, but it's batshit crazy. This is really insane. Gwinnett County Public School System has something like 183,000 students, big budget, $2.5 billion or something like that. And if the Gwinnett County Government Commission, I should say, had their way, this would population would double here in 20 years, and so that number would grow to, who knows, 400,000 students. So the problem's just going to magnify itself. I'm going to talk about a sample of what restorative justice is, a sample scenario, if you will. But first, I want to play some videos, a sampling of videos from a teacher, a parent, and a student, talking to the school board and explaining that this policy just isn't going to work. The first is a parent who is English is not her first language, so she's being assisted by her daughter.
Circular por las redes sociales. Explica si quieres todo lo que está pasando.
My concern is towards the safety of my children, my son and his friends. Currently, there have been threats of shootings in Meadow Creek High School, and we want to know what can we do and what will you guys help us do to keep our children.
And this is a student who is telling the board what his experiences have been.
Good evening, board members. My name is Thaden, and I'm here to advocate for my fellow students. The fighting in my school is almost daily occurrence. The disrespect some students have to the teachers and staff is unreal. I can see some of my teachers feeling like they have little to no control over the kids. They just want to be disrespectful and not learn. My teachers put a lot of time into their lessons and try to make it interesting and fun. Then you have the few students that do nothing but harass them until class ends. This has to be stopped. The student removed. If that student has nothing to do more than disrupt, they shouldn't be in the class. ISS, it looked like a vacation day for some of them. Students sent to the discipline office only to be sent back just to disrupt again. Students being beaten in the bathrooms where you have to hide in a stall so you don't get dragged into the fight or accused of being involved.
And this is a teacher who has decided to come public and voice her criticism to the administration of basically the management that she works, of the company she works for.
What we need from our leaders, we need support. We need help to implement the new discipline policy that you have created. We cannot do this work alone. You have teachers who are literally drowning. We are tired. We need your help. We are crying out. Our students are crying out. We know that you can do better. We are willing to work with you. We are willing to support you. But we do not deserve to be treated and talked to like we have been treated these past several months since you implemented this policy. I had a student who I love, who I have told I love her, and I know she loves me. She called me a stupid ass bitch yesterday. That is not acceptable. And just like I told her, I love you, but I do not love your behavior right now. We need your help.
These are not the only teachers and parents, students that have problem with policy and have spoken publicly at the meetings. I just want to show you a sampling. Take my word for it. You can look on their website, Gwinnett County Public Schools. This change to restorative justice, this program has just been in place for a few months. This is, the next clip I'm going to show you is Therese Johnson, who is a radical BLM activist, anti-capitalist. I think her words and actions, she's Marxist. That's my opinion. And I don't say that as pejorative. It's just, it is what it is. There's two other radical board members that went along with this shameful, it's embarrassing. This policy is really embarrassing to put the parents and students and teachers through, because it's an impossible task after I go through it. But this is her, in her words, basically saying it doesn't work. I mean, she's supporting my conclusion, but she doesn't know it.
The impact of the policy may be executed in a way where teachers do not feel safe, where students do not feel safe. The policy is a good policy. The challenge we have is about the execution of the policy. Implementing the policy requires for us to ensure that our teachers are trained, to ensure that our teachers also have the time that is needed to be able to do this very important work.
So she's saying the policy is great, the execution is the problem. Well, if it's a great policy, it's going to improve, it wouldn't be hard to execute. And to execute, and her comments are longer than this, you can go read them, or listen to them, I should say, but it would require lots and lots more money to support these teachers and school faculty in implementing this restorative justice system, if you will. The other two board members I'm referring to that are radical are Karen Watkins and Everton Blair. These three folks have apparently completely bought into diversity, equity, inclusion, the woke. They believe that's the way to go, because that's where this comes from. And Therese Johnson is sort of the ringleader of this group. She is the chair, and she has a long public history of being a BLM activist, anti-capitalist, and she uses in these public statements the word diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, all the buzzwords. And her Facebook page is just day after day after day of posts. TikTok, day after day after day of posts on these subjects. And you would think, it just seems like an inordinate amount of energy put into this. But this is a clip of her kind of sort of demonstrating her Marxist beliefs.
Come where we put our elbows and our foot on the necks of corporate America. The time has come where we end anti-black capitalism and structural racism. The time is now. The time is now for an economic revolution.
So that is Therese Johnson. The board is, you can look on their website and see, this is sort of a representative scenario that will demonstrate restorative practices. So I'll read through this and stop and make some comments as I go. What is restorative justice in schools? And that's the title. It is, this scenario is endorsed, or these practices are endorsed by the National Educators Association and the American Federation of Teachers. So what is restorative justice in schools? A tale of two schools. Carlos had a heated argument with his parents before leaving for school, so he's running late. Let's see the difference that restorative policies and practices can make. Okay, their assumption is you're going to read this, and they've used words to try to lead you in a direction that this is a great idea. When I read this, I'm thinking this would be hell for the students, parents, and teachers. But there's also, before I get into this, the idea that Carlos had a heated argument with his parents, and the parents didn't make sure he got to school on time. That's kind of an, I'm sure that happens, but it's kind of an outlier scenario. Just throw that in there. On the one side, you have zero tolerance education system. And the words zero tolerance mean nothing unless you are talking about a specific action. For example, zero tolerance for one child stabbing, or one student, shouldn't say child, I mean, some of these are adults, 18 years old, senior high school. But one student stabs another one with a knife, and, well, you'd have zero tolerance for that, you would assume. But when you just say zero tolerance for everything, it's just not, that's just not ever, it doesn't mean anything, that term. But they're trying to lead you in a direction when they use that term. He is greeted by metal detectors and a police search as he arrives at school. Okay, first of all, I don't really see anything inherently wrong with going through a metal detector in a public building, especially when you have a huge, some of these public schools and high schools are huge student bodies. But this is interesting when it says he is greeted by metal detectors and a police search. When I go through a metal detector, typically I'm not searched afterwards unless metal's found. But in this case, they're trying to lead you in a direction of, well, both things are going to happen as they're greeted. The next thing, he's late to first period class. His teacher scolds him in front of the class. Carlos talks back and is given a detention. Okay, well, scold, that word, instead of admonish or warned, that they shouldn't be late again. Scold's picked because it implies that the teacher did this in a very demeaning or negative way, or nagging way is what scold is often used for. But this word is picked, as I said, to lead you in a direction. The other thing about this is Carlos talks back. Well, what did he say? Was it worthy of being a detention? What if the teacher didn't say anything but just kind of gave him a look? Hey, you're disrupting class. And he talked back. Would that be worthy of detention? Teachers have to have some sort of ability to control order in their classroom, which would presumably encompass punishment. Carlos gets into a minor altercation in the cafeteria. So minor altercation, but in zero tolerance education system, a minor altercation, see, I don't know what that means. It's not defined here. A school police officer detains and arrests both students. Both students. So in the zero tolerance system, and we'll get to the other system, restorative practice system, zero tolerance, they're arrested and detained, but the altercation rose to that magnitude, and that's what the decision was made to do. But in the restorative practices, that doesn't happen. It doesn't rise to that level. So let's say you have a 16-year-old at a job, and they have a minor altercation with another employee. They're attending high school, but they also have a part-time job. In that case, that minor altercation might involve the manager of the business or the business owner calling the police and having them both arrested. But at school, that's not the case. That's why it's such a strange thing to use the word minor altercation. We don't know what that means. And then later that afternoon, Carlos is held in a juvenile detention facility all afternoon, missing school. He now has an arrest record and is facing suspension. Okay, this minor altercation rose to that level, but not with restorative justice. Didn't matter who was at fault either. They don't get into that, who started this minor altercation. So to go to the other side, restorative practices-based education system. Carlos arrives at school. Teachers and administrators welcome him and his fellow students as they enter. So he's late for school. It says he's running late, but he's greeted, he's welcomed along with his other fellow students who are also late. Okay, they have to be late too. You can only interpret that as they're all arriving at the same time. And that doesn't have to deal with a metal detector. I guess because that's a demeaning thing or something. I don't get that. The next step, he's late to first period class. Well, instead of being scolded, his teacher waits until after class to speak with Carlos to learn more and sets up a meeting with his school counselor. So, presumably, learning more means it's a given that he would share the heated argument that he had with his parents. What the situation is. The next step is Carlos gets into a minor altercation in a cafeteria. So what happens is student peer mediators and support staff intervene. Have the students sit down together and de-escalate the situation. Okay. So when do these multiple student peers, I can't imagine counseling a child that's in high school to participate as a student peer mediator. I would counsel them not to do that. Actually, reading all this, I tell you kids not to go to any school that has this. This looks like hell for everybody. But at any rate, peer mediators and support staff intervene, and they have them sit down together and talk. Even though one of the students might have been the instigator and the other student is a victim. Because we don't know what minor altercation means. But in the one side, you're going to get arrested, and the other, you're not. So the last thing is later that afternoon, Carlos and the other student agreed to help clean the cafeteria during a free period. Doesn't matter whether Carlos was bullying the other student or the other way around, they got to clean the cafeteria together. Carlos meets with his counselor and parents after school to help resolve the conflict at home, if Carlos actually shared that. And I would think most time kids wouldn't share what they argue about with their parents. But this says all the stars have to align perfectly, and there's a lot of stars in the universe for this to work. This is really a crazy idea. It should be completely avoided. It's embarrassing that I think they would be embarrassed. The school board would be embarrassed to have this ridiculous policy in place. You could believe that this is a good idea and not be a Marxist. I didn't mean to imply earlier that you could just be misguided and not understand that these punishments that under the one system are warranted now are not warranted. So you don't have the proper disincentives in place that you would have for these folks that they're going to have to deal with if they're employed at a job. Totally different behavior. So you're actually hurting them by not saying, hey, you need to be at work on time. If you show up at work, a job, you learn right away that you will get reprimanded, verbally admonished if you show up late for work. It's very disruptive to show up late for work. And so you're going to say, oh, well, it's not that bad to show up late for school. Because if you're admonished at the workplace for showing up for late, you talk back. That's not a good thing, depending upon what the talk back is. This is also related to something called social and emotional learning. And the superintendent of the Gwinnett County Public School System, his name is Calvin Watts. This is him at a school board meeting talking about social emotional learning.
Social emotional learning means that we want to help our students be able to manage their emotions, to be able to self-correct, to be able to lead with empathy, to understand what it's like to walk in others' shoes so that you can address others' needs. That's students and staff. That's behavior that's often taught at home, but sometimes it's taught differently in different homes. So we want to make sure we're providing a level of clarity and certainty, and so we're offering this.
This is just shameful. It's embarrassing that you would think that the school system would have the wherewithal to get to rear every single student that comes through the doors. This is a job of parents. You heard it yourself. Well, it's taught differently in different homes, so we have to fill in the void. No, you don't. It won't work. You don't have the capacity to do that. Listen to the teachers, they're telling you this. And you knew this before you took this on. You've got to get rid of this guy. You've got to get rid of this guy. You've got to replace these 3 radical school board members who are all in on putting your kids at risk. A lot of people don't know this. The Parkland shooting, you remember a few years ago, there was a group of students who was lauded, got a lot of national coverage because the guns were the problem. So that suits the media's narrative and the leftist narrative, and the media ran with it. And there were another group of students who said, when the incident occurred, I knew who it was. I knew who did this. And the deaths that were involved, I think it was 13 or something. It was a lot. It was a lot of deaths. It was it's a pretty notorious school shooting. These students said he told us he was going to do this. His behavior told us. He told us verbally, and his behavior told us he was going to do this. This was not a surprise to us. The school system, if we knew this, how would the school faculty not know this? So you expel the student for the safety of the other students, and if he shows up, you're on guard, and maybe those people don't die. It seems to make, as I said, restorative justice in schools. It is a really stupid idea. It will fail. Don't send if you can get them out of Gwinnett Public Schools, do it. You got to get rid of the superintendent, because he went along with this, and he should know better. You've got to get rid of the 3 or maybe more school board members. And the last thing is imperative, because if you're not able to accomplish that, or in the meantime, you got to get school choice, the state legislature in a county, any government entity, not really crazy about the federal government being involved, supporting the subsidizing people to go to send their kids to other schools of their choice. That means other government schools and also private schools. I interviewed one of the current sitting members, Steve Knudsen, and he made the comment that we don't have any failing schools. Well, that's really not resounding endorsement of the school system. What you want to hear is that all of the schools are excelling. Just because we have a few that don't fail, whatever that word is, or criteria, I should say, for that term, I don't think that's good enough. And this is destined for failure. They're going to change. They're going to stick with it for a long time. Therese Johnson will stick with it till the end. for sure. The others may come around. There's a new board member. Hopefully she has a little more sanity than these three. What remains to be seen. Those are my thoughts on restorative justice in schools. And thank you for watching. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. There's some other topics on the school board that I want to get into in future episodes because I think it's very important. And thank you.